And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. And we are brought to you by our friends over at Kexi. I got to tell you, Kexi sent me a box. I thought my birthday couldn't get any better. And just a couple of days later, big old box comes in, guys. I open it up. And it's the outstanding cookies from Kexi. I had the, I reunited with the Texas sheet cake cookie from a few months ago, the last time they sent me a box of those. And it felt so good. I mean, those cookies are something else, all right? And they're from Pat Gray's family. Yes, the same Pat Gray that we work with here at The Blaze. These are not your average store-bought cookies. Real premium ingredients, nothing fake, nothing weird, just insanely good, and they taste homemade. This month's star, they have a coffee cake cookie, soft and buttery with brown sugar cinnamon swirl, a crumbly streusel topping. Basically, your favorite coffee cake turned into a ridiculous good cookie, and the best part, Kexi ships it straight to your door, so you don't even have to leave the house to get in on this. They just sent me a box right to my door. And I mean, I have like a plan, all right? Staying within the discipline and everything else. You know how often I can eat one of these. This box is going to last me a bit. I'm going to savor it, man. All right. So, you can get 15% off your order right now with Deace 15. That's Deace 15 at Kexi, Keksi, Keksi, Kexi.com. Go there. Keksi, 15% off with the code Deace 15. You won't regret it. These cookies are absolutely next level. All right, coming up here on today's show. I don't know if you guys saw our buddy Bob Vander Plaats' X account over the weekend, but I thought maybe I was going to get accused of hijacking it. Because you guys see him fire a shot across Charles Grassley's bow?
Yep. No.
Yeah, he did. He fired a shot across Grassley's bow to say, hey, get to work, man. Let's make sure we get these appointments for the president. Let's make sure we get these done and cleared. So we got to ask him about that. What prompted that? What caused that? Because normally, let's just forget that who knows how many thousands of people are listening to this now and or will later. All right. Let's just forget that for a second. Just act like it's just the three of us. Can we do that?
Sure.
These are normally the kinds of things that Bob asked me to post. He doesn't have to. Just being honest.
Yeah, that's been the math.
He's I'm the Dark Knight and he's Harvey Dent, before, the fire. Okay. Yeah. So, the fact that he just fired that one off made me think, whoa. So we'll ask Bob about that and what kind of caused him to go thermo on the old chuck wagon coming up here at the bottom of the hour. Next hour, it'll be your turn to ask me anything. We'll go to our X followers this week for the questions. Hopefully, I know there's a lot of them, so hopefully there's at least a few that are good ones as well. So we'll get to those in the next hour. But first, let's get to Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Jack Smith for prison. Federal authorities have opened an investigation into former special counsel Jack Smith over allegations of illegal political conduct. It's according to the New York Post. Smith is being investigated by the Hatch Act unit on behalf of the United States Department of Justice, according to an email obtained by the outlet from senior counsel Charles Baldus of the Office of Special Counsel. Smith, of course, was the main proprietor of the lawfare President Trump faced while out of office, at least as the federal government is concerned, thanks largely due to his appointment as special counsel by then Attorney General Merrick Garland. Maybe we're about to see some accountability. Maybe the process is the punishment. We will see. President Trump on Friday fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner hours after the agency reported that job growth in the United States had slowed to a near halt. In a Truth Social post that also directed even more fire at Fed Chair Jerome Powell, Trump accused BLS Commissioner Erica McCuntifer of being a political appointee who was manipulating jobs data. Buzzing this morning is the news Congresswoman Nancy Mace is running for governor of South Carolina. The campaign slogan is Mace in your face. Just kidding. And she released the following ad this morning.
When she sets her sight on something, she's tough.
And we will be prepared to take on the challenges of this historic moment.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued a strongly worded letter, trademark, last night after members of Texas's Democrat delegation fled the state in order to stop the passage of Texas's congressional redistricting map. Abbott threatened the fleeing Democrats with possible felonies if they don't show up for work by this afternoon. Vice President J.D. Vance says he wants to get to the bottom of this hot-button topic during the month of August.
There are stories that I am particularly focused on, in part just because you talk with your buddies about it. Like, I'm obsessed with the whole UFO thing. What's actually going on? What were those videos all about? What's actually happening? I haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet, but we're only 6 months in. We've been very busy. That's actually the August recess is in part me going to try to dive to the bottom of the whole UFO thing from last year. So
I mean, you got to have us back.
Okay, I'll let you know.
An administrator at the University of Iowa has been caught on camera describing how she's not so subtly subverting both state and federal guidelines to squash diversity, equity, and inclusion garbage.
We were like, oh, okay, we can't use that word. Okay, civic engagement. I think that's a lot of what we're doing. It's like, oh, okay, we're not allowed to use this word. Okay, well, we're just going to do this. So yeah, that's why you're not going to see DEI listed on any University of Iowa website, but there have been transitions and things that they've done, so they're not like getting rid of certain things. On behalf of my office, we're still going to talk about DEI. We're still going to deal with DEI thing.
That's Dre Tinoco, Leadership and Student Organization Development Assistant Director at the University of Iowa, who has been placed on administrative leave. A second University of Iowa employee, Corey Lockwood, was also placed on administrative leave after a similar undercover video surfaced with him expressing similar sentiments. Check out this chart that made the rounds over the weekend, which shows the estimated percentage of 30-year-olds in the United States who are both married and own a home. Back in the 1950s, the percentage was estimated at over 50%. Today, it's under 15%. 30-year-olds who are married and also own a home. Whether it's the price of homes or lack of motivation from young men, there are no good answers to explain that.
And Aaron's montage is brought to you by our friends over at Constitution Wealth. Hey, we've got two questions for you. Are your investments maybe unknowingly going against your values? Number two, are you sure that your investment dollars are not being used to oppose what you just voted for in the last election? If that's you, well, hey, your investment should be working as hard as you did to get the money for those investments. And they should align every bit with the values that you're fighting hard now to preserve in this last great hope for the human condition east of Eden. And that's where our friends at Constitution Wealth come in. They can help you specifically screen your investments for your values, ensuring that your money supports the causes and the companies that support your value systems. So that now your wealth is not being weaponized against you, but you're weaponizing it for you and for your legacy, as we just talked about with Jared Allen. Get started today with a free consultation when you go to constitutionwealth.com/blaze. Get a free consultation today at constitutionwealth.com/blaze. Also, remember to visit constitutionwealth.com because they're a registered investment advisor, so you should review their disclosures there on their website at constitutionwealth.com and understand their services and fees. Don't forget that all investing involves risk, including, sadly, the risk of loss. I am a client of the firm. This is a paid endorsement, but my opinions are my own. All right, since I have permission now, since Aaron put it in the montage, I have permission to bring this subject up. I know that we had determined the official position of the show is show us the bodies, right? Since we determined that, how many times have I brought this subject up on the show? I think it's zero. I've honored our best practices, right? All right. But since Aaron broke the seal, courtesy of the vice president, I have to share this with you. This is from Robert Malone, who's been on this show numerous times. One of the most renowned scamdemic warriors that we had during that period of time. And he's now, I think, I can't remember his official gig, but it's like he's on like an FDA or CDC advisory panel.
Yeah, wasn't he on the vaccine advisory committee?
Yeah,
now?
It's some kind of vaccine advisory committee for RFK Jr. All right. This is him appearing on the show. Now, I don't have the name of the show. Wait, I do. Let me see here. I want to make sure I give this show, I'm not stealing it, Tommy's Podcast. Okay. Tommy's Podcast has 51,000 followers on Rumble, so it's not a nothing burger. Okay. Sorry, Tommy, we just don't know who you are, but I wanted to make sure you got a plug because it was your interview. All right. So Tommy's Podcast on Rumble. All right. Credit to Tommy. Okay. This is Robert Malone, and I'm going to quote, talking to Tommy's Podcast on Rumble. Quote, RFK Jr. had a briefing, and all of this stuff is true. Roswell, all those things. Whether they're time travelers and they're humans coming back, or they're from another dimension, or they're whatever, fill in the blank. But apparently, it's all real. unquote. Now, that is from a renowned scientist, Robert Malone, that we featured his work on this show how many times during the point that we needed real science, maybe more than ever before in American history, okay? I mean, he consulted with both me and Daniel quite frequently during the scamdemic. We featured him in Rise of the Fourth Reich as well, okay? So, any reaction to that at all?
Don't care.
You still don't care?
Absolutely not.
All right.
To the extent that any of that is true, it's just communion with demons.
So you would be in the Tucker Carlson camp that our government is in communication with supernatural
if it's actually
forces.
true, if it's actually, if these accounts are as true as recollection makes it, they're not actually talking to interdimensional time travelers from other planets or anything like that. It's just communion with demons.
You want to explain to the audience why you don't care?
This is a truth of such consequential importance that it's going to have to come from more than Tommy's podcast or RFK talking off the cuff. The vice president is saying, "Hey, my August recess, this is on my to-do list." They were in the ball game there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just the same. This is silliness.
Okay.
How about that phrase? I'm going to need more than Tommy's podcast.
Well, Todd, to be fair to Tommy, Todd apparently is going to need more than the Steve Day Show podcast and pretty much every other podcast, I guess is what you're trying to say, right? Not just Tommy in particular. What do you think of Robert Malone opining on this, though?
How did it? Well, I'd have to watch the whole thing, which he was just asked about it.
Yeah, he was asked about it, and that was his answer. Is there a reason? I am fascinated that the Secretary of Health and Human Services would get a briefing on this.
Yeah, that part of that kind of was a red flag.
Yeah,
that's kind of weird.
Yeah, I just would want, or maybe. Well, here's the thing. Maybe senior administration officials were given a briefing on this, and RFK Jr. would be amongst those people. It would also indicate, that now that I'm piecing some things together potentially, again, I could be just, talking out of the rectum here, but that could also indicate why the vice president is so fascinated in it, because he would have been in such a briefing as well of senior administration officials. Anyway, I just thought since it wasn't on my radar to bring this up at all, but since it was Aaron's montage, I felt like I should add that follow-up. Okay. Let's continue on to two other topics. One that is a good trend, and one that is like listening to Carl Lewis try to sing the national anthem. Okay? Let's start with the good. Now, this is going to seem like a backhanded compliment, and it's the Republican Party, so that's much of what they deserve. Okay? But for much of my career now, and I'm going on 20 years full-time in this racket, for much of my career, forget doing what it takes to advance the ball systemically the way we want on policy. They would not do what it takes to advance the ball for their own electoral outcomes. Like continuing to give hundreds of millions of dollars in subsidies to Planned Parenthood, which until the last few years with the Rainbow Jihad was the largest donor bundling operation the Democratic Party had, was the abortionists, the baby killers. Why you'd give them a free government check on anything? I mean, can you imagine Democrats giving subsidies to the Family Research Council? Think that would ever happen? No, would never happen. Okay. Or the American Family Association? No, of course not. All right. So the fact that Greg Abbott, who by the reputation of Texas, maybe we'll put it that way, by the reputation of Texas, shall we say, has been hesitant to act on multiple fronts. Okay,
that'll work. It's a placeholder.
All right, you got to take the W's when you get them, and you got to start somewhere. All right, the fact that the Republicans in Texas now, and in several of these other places, are willing to do the kinds of things that it will take to actually win, which is, we're just going to redraw the map, and you guys are out 5 more seats. I like them apples. See, and my guess is this is a preview of the conversation we're about to have with Bob Vanderplaats here in a few minutes. This is the difference in whether you know what time it is or not. Well, it ain't no fun when the rabbits got the gun and we have Senate decorum and Senate tradition and look what they'll do to us if we do this. Look what they'll do to us, Steve, when they have power. You mean like shoot our presidential candidate in the friggin' face? You mean stuff like that? They might do that. An outgoing president might get together with the intelligence community and take a lie planted by the wannabe incoming president because she was getting killed over the fact that she was running a Ponzi scheme called a foundation and deleting all of her emails about it. It had the FBI director, vast swaths of the intelligence community in on it. They all knew it was a lie. Then they met after the election and decided just to carry it on into the new administration too. And then they launched an impeachment off of something that they planted and knew all along was a lie. They might do stuff like that, maybe. They might do that. They might do that. Listen, if you're still making the left might do that stuff to us, dude, you missed your calling. Why didn't you apply to be a column writer at National Review in 2005? You missed your true calling. You missed your first best destiny. 2004 wants its columns and blogs back. Send them home. So at least now we're doing the kind of kneecapping that it will take to win. Now, this is just, don't get me wrong. I mean, we just watched them run an entire printing, voter scam called a presidential election in 2020 and everything else. But I don't think you guys, if you're new to this thing, I wish I could remember this guy's name. It's Matt something. And he's adorable. I think Glenn just had him on a show, actually. He's this guy who's new to the right, came to us through RFK Jr.
Taibbi?
No, not Matt Taibbi. It's Swolkin or something is the guy's name, okay? And he's gone viral with like several posts like, are these people, have Republicans always been this weak? Have you seen these posts? Because I've shared a few of them, right? And you can tell the guy's new to politics and it's adorable, okay? It's absolutely adorable. And so he has not been worked over at all. And so he took this like all really earnestly, okay? He's like, I don't understand. Why aren't they in session making this stuff? He's just, and he's increasingly perplexed. And then the vocabulary increasingly expands or maybe diminishes to four-letter bombs to describe his level of frustration. Okay. All right. So if you're new here, this is new. I mean, Greg Abbott's the guy that issued a national security emergency at the border of Texas, signed it, and did nothing. That was just a couple years ago. Remember, that was just a couple years ago. Okay. So this is progress. This is progress, that they're willing to do some of these sorts of things. I mean, don't get me wrong, man. We're not even to doing the things it will actually take to beat these guys. We're not even there yet, okay? But we couldn't even get these guys. I mean, if you've been here a minute like I have been, if this is not your first rodeo with the Republican Party, how often have you felt like you wanted the Republican Party to win more than they did, right? Come on, right? How many times have we been on that show? Aaron, you grew up listening to that show, I would imagine.
How many days end with the letter or Y?
Yes, indeed, times infinity. So the fact that they're actually willing to break a sweat to try and win, don't get me wrong. They do all kinds of things to us in primaries they never do to Democrats, especially in places like Texas, okay? But hey, the fact that Greg Abbott's willing to play, I wouldn't even call it hardball here, okay? All right, this is not hardball. It's politics, actually. I know I said this was going to be a compliment at the beginning. I meant it to be. Okay, I'm getting there. I'm rounding home.
It's a heavy lift.
It is. I'm bringing it home. All right.
This is why we don't need alien talk. The undiscovered country is right here.
Yes, it is. But this, nice reference. But this is, it's a start. How about we go with that? My conscience will say it's at least a start. So props for that, I guess. All right. Aaron, do you have that chart? Can you
I can grab it.
Can you throw back up there really quick? Because now we went from the good, which I must admit, by the time I got to the end, it really didn't sound that good. I meant it to. It was intended to be. Don't judge me.
You didn't suck today.
Yeah, nice exactly. Job, yeah. You didn't actually commit Hare Krishna. Okay, so you that's good. You didn't win, but you didn't lose. She didn't lose. All right, that's a start. Okay. So this chart right here, though, this is a loss. I'm just going to tell you right now, this is like how Wall-E happens. No exaggeration. This is death of a culture. This is, you may not, without spiritual revival, you cannot materialistically return from this. And I mean, look at the trend line of what's happened since the 1990s. I mean, look at that. I mean, no wonder. If you're the Chi-Coms, you don't need to risk a nuclear war. Just wait this thing out, man. Dumbest thing that the Islamic Jihad ever did was 9/11. Dumbest thing. All right? Didn't have to do any of that. Just wait this out. We're coming your way. We're headed your way. This is unrecoverable. Percentage of 30-year-olds who are both married and homeowners in the last 75 years. You won't dig out of that. And there's all kinds of reasons. There's economic reasons that are very valid, cultural reasons that are very valid, familial reasons. Where are the dads that modeled this? Very valid. Okay. See, the reason, for example, if you look at the inflection point here where the number was steadily declining, but the steep decline begins in the early 90s. We start getting into an era now where 70% of black kids are born out of wedlock. 40% of white kids are born out of wedlock. Okay. You start getting into a full generation of that. So proper male behavior, the whole legacy thing that Jared Allen was just talking about at the end of Aaron's montage, there's no legacy there. Nothing being passed down, nothing being modeled. And now so the government steps in to take the place of dad, and then just look at the free fall. All right. You could also look early 90s. That's where seeker sensitivism really took over the church. So no real discipleship happens for a generation either. All right. Largest tax increase in American history happened when Bush violated the No New Taxes pledge. Right. The growth of government has just exploded and expanded ever since then. Okay. And you can just see all of these social contagions all conspire now, and that's not a graphic, folks. That is a free fall. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, I'm using very dire language. It doesn't approach the impact of seeing this actually visually on a page. The number one thing that has to be fixed, the number one symptom, because it's a symptom, the ultimate disease is we need Jesus, okay? But the first symptom of this is this right here. This chart right here is the first symptom of what happens when you lose your plumb line, your cornerstone as a culture. This is the first thing that goes. Legacy gone. Responsibility gone. The family unit gone. If that is not fixed, or at least or course corrected, I'm just going to tell you right now, your kids and grandkids, and I'm talking about my own, they're going to live in a communist country and or need to know Arabic. You are not going to Netflix and chill your way past that. And based on what happened to Fantastic Four over the weekend, Marvel's not making good enough movies that distract enough people anymore either. So that graphic right there, my friends, is where the rubber hits the road. Everything we talk about and address on shows like this and networks like this, what would bring it all home? That graphic right there. More in a moment. Hey, back here on the Steve Deace Show, sponsored by our friends over at MD Hearing. Maybe you haven't seen the food shopping bill go down as much as you had hoped, gas go down as much as you had hoped. I mean, things are less expensive than they were, but we're still digging out of a lot of inflation over the last few years, so they're still too expensive. When's it going to end? Well, it's over if you need a new hearing aid. That's what our friends over at MD Hearing have done. They have cut their prices in half despite all the inflation craziness. And MD Hearing makes high-quality, easy-to-use, rechargeable hearing aids with exceptional sound quality that are personalized to your hearing profile. They just made their Neo rechargeable digital hearing aids only $297 a pair. That's over 90% less than the clinic hearing aids. And it fits right there inside your ear. No one's going to even know that it's there. They also just launched the Neo XS, MD Hearing's smallest hearing aid ever. MD Hearing, how do they do this? Well, they were founded by an ENT surgeon who saw many of his patients needed hearing aids. They just couldn't afford them. So he made it his mission to develop a quality hearing aid that anyone could afford, and that's why they've sold over 2 million hearing aids. They offer a 45-day risk-free trial with a 100% money-back guarantee, so you can buy with confidence, get the high-quality, affordable hearing aids you deserve with MD Hearing. Listen, I give these to my own stepdad, so obviously I want him to hear us. So if I'm giving them away to people I care about in my family, then, I think that these things work. Go to shopmdhearing.com, use promo code Steve to get a pair for just $297. Plus, they're adding a free extra charging case. That's a $100 value just for being a part of our show. That's shopmdhearing.com. Use the promo code Steve and get that special deal, a pair of hearing aids for just $297. mdhearing.com, promo code Steve. Let's welcome in our good friend, Bob Vander Plaats. Good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Doing well. Happy Monday. Good to be here.
Happy Monday to you, man. Listen, I thought over the weekend maybe I had hijacked your X account.
Really?
Right? Yeah. Because typically this is the stuff I post so that you don't have to, so that you can continue to be liked and to be above reproach. And so I can absorb all the heat and be the bad guy. Plus, I kind of enjoyed it, for being honest. Yeah. Okay, so it's not like you had to it's not like I had to be dragged into this. Okay, but it kind of threw me for a loop when I log on to X, and I'm like, whoa, Chuckwagon catching strays on X. Our senator here from my good buddy Bob Vanderplaats. So I know you are quite fond on a personal level of the Chuckwagon and have known him for many, many years. Listen, listen, in all seriousness, okay. Iowans love Chuck Grassley, and he loves Iowans, and that's why he's been elected here almost as long as I have been alive. That's a problem, but we'll discuss that another day, okay? But so I know that this had to be something unique in this situation for you to fire a shot across his bow. So what was it?
Well, first of all, you're right. I have a great deal of regard for Senator Grassley. He is one who hasn't gone Washington on us. He has stayed rooted in Iowa, comes home every weekend. He's somebody that I endorsed in the primary. And so, Steve, I think this goes back a long ways. As a matter of fact, you're a part of this. When people said, you can't oust 3 Supreme Court justices. Remember those days?
I do, yeah.
You can't.
It's just tradition. It's decorum. It's the way we do things. We have to just honor it. Yeah.
And you'll never, ever beat them, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, they went outside their constitutional parameters. They basically legislated or imposed same-sex marriage on the state of Iowa without it going through the legislative branch, without going through the executive branch. And we said, you can't do that. So the people are in charge. It's not the courts that are in charge. And so we levied this campaign to oust 3 Supreme Court justices. And even on the night of the election, I had the New York Times and others who were covering it there in Des Moines saying, hey, listen, you ran a great campaign, but all of our polling says they're still going to be retained. Mm-hmm. And then that night, we ousted them like between 8 and 10 points, every one of them.
He actually won by a bigger margin than the Republican governor nominee did.
And it made, obviously, national news all over the place. It was on the front page of the Des Moines Register for 2 weeks afterwards, but we sent a message. And so part of the reason I put out that tweet is I know Senator Grassley's been there for a long time. And I'm not against him being there for a long time. I believe in term limits, but he's there.
A very, 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 very long time.
But he's represented us well, and he's very accessible. I mean, if you call him, he's calling you back, okay? Mm-hmm. If you're texting him, he'll text you back. Sometimes you got to decipher the text, but he'll text you back. But here's a deal where I really could sense the frustration of President Trump. Listen, these guys elected me so I could put the people in who I want to be confirmed for U.S. attorney, for justices to fill the bench. And now I've got this arcane rule or this law that's institutionalized saying, you know what, but you can't do this. This can be blocked by you. And that's why I thought, you know what, it's a little bit like with the justices. Yeah, you're not supposed to touch them. You're not supposed to launch a campaign against them and all that stuff, but throw caution in the wind. Let's go after them anyhow. This is one of those deals where I totally agree with President Trump. Whatever this blue slip rule is, when's the last time you guys debated and negotiated the blue slip?
I got to tell you, I've been doing this for 20 years. and I've never done a single show on the blue slip rule.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, here's another reason why we can't confirm justices and U.S. attorneys that Trump has appointed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I thought, I saw Trump's frustration in his post, and I thought, listen, I'm in Iowa. I agree with him. I'm going to put my frustration out there in my tweet and see where it lands. And I got to tell you, Steve, to Senator Grassley's credit, he saw my tweet, and he called me up on Friday. And he and I had a really, really good conversation, probably a 20-minute conversation. And he reminded me of all the good he's done, how he prevented Obama from appointing a Supreme Court justice.
He didn't go Joe Biden and just start screaming, how can you have your pudding if you don't eat your meat? No, he knew the details.
He denied that. And so therefore, Trump got 3 Supreme Court justices, which led to the overturn of Roe v. Wade.
Now, real quick, for people that wonder why Grassley's at the focal point of this, because he's the head of the Judiciary Committee, that's why.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then he got Pam Bondi through, he got Kash Patel through, he got Trump's personal...
Yeah, we're not actually sure that we should be bragging about those, but keep going. Okay.
He got Trump's personal attorney through. I mean, so he's done yeoman's work. I think he also prevented some bad justices from Biden getting through as well. And so he's kind of like, dude, I have produced a lot for you. And I shared him and said, listen, I don't understand this whole blue slip thing, but maybe you and President Trump need to get in a room and decide how do you get around it that would satisfy your institutional loyalty, which he has a lot of, but also where the people are at, where we're just kind of frustrated where things have to be the way they have to be, get these people confirmed.
So here's the thing about this. This is a different. These two guys have different perspectives, and the perspective that Charles Grassley has is he has the perspective, in my view, of the gatekeeper of an institution. Okay, and that he is trying to preserve an institution from being swallowed whole by radicals, most of them on the other side. Okay, and he thinks the best way to do that is to use the levers of power within that institution to both handcuff the radicals on their side, but that also therefore would create a process by which he would then hamper the speed by which our own side could work, and then brand this as some form of Senate collegiality or Senate tradition or Senate decorum. Okay, the other guy, he got shot in the face, and the bullet said on it Senate decorum, Senate tradition, blue slip. Ain't no fun when the rabbits got the gun. We have to manage the institutions. We have to preserve, the traditions of how we do things around here. The bullet had all those things because the spirit of the age, where all those sayings come from, was who fired off that blast. All right. The other guy, okay, they tried to put him in prison for 95 years, and he's 78. Okay, over whether or not he issued a hush money payment to a porn star over 20 years ago. Okay. From a bunch of politicians who, frankly, are just walking honeypot grifts. Okay, so the other guy's perspective is a tad different, and he's like, I'm going to be a lame duck the first Wednesday in November. All right, if you all do not do your jobs and get as many of these things approved as possible, so we can actually implement our agenda, because now that we're past the executive order phase, now that we're past the big beautiful bill phase. I mean, there are still things Congress can do. We have still been fighting some things out in Congress, but we're by and large now in the judicial insurrection lawfare phase of this now. And we got to start stacking the deck with his people. Otherwise, much of the stuff that was done over the last 6 months will just get completely annihilated inside the court system, as we've already seen for the first 6 months.
Yeah. So Trump understands, and Trump knew this right away. Matter of fact, when I talked to him, he said, the first 100 days, which we're past the first 100 days now, we need to move, and we need to move quick because, as you just said, time is not on our side here. Because you got the midterms coming. If we're not successful in the midterms, they're going to try to, make me a lame duck president type. So we need to get all this through. That being said, they both have something in common, Grassley and Trump. Grassley was kind of Doge before Doge was cool. He was the whistleblower on, what are we doing with these expenses in the military? What are we doing for these? He was trying to call it out. What he was trying to do is protect the integrity of the institution. And all of us, you need to have institutions with integrity in order to execute things. Trump, on the other hand, he's been a disruptor to the institutions, but he's also been, and we've talked about this since he's got elected in 2016, he's been an exposer of the institutions. I'm exposing them. And now he's basically exposing this blue slip thing, which I got to believe if you polled the average American, less than have any idea what a blue slip is and how it works.
See, few people know this, okay? But the American Revolution was actually going to start a couple years earlier than it did. And then the Sons of Liberty were gathered at a Boston pub, and one of them was reminded that they had to honor the blue slip tradition with King George III. They had to make sure they went through and all of those various codicils and subsections and headers all had to be honored. And so they went ahead and decided to put up with tyranny for a couple more years afterwards just to make sure that all decorum and tradition among Englishmen was fulfilled.
Is that really how it went down?
Few people know this. Few people know this. Yeah.
But the other thing, I mean, I'm going to go back to Senator Grassley for just a second and have his back a little bit. When President Trump said, listen, I had to encourage Senator Grassley to run again, that is true. Because when Senator Grassley ran again, he was 87 years old. And he was really questioning, should I run again? And President Trump said, we need to keep that seat. We need to have control of the Senate. You're the one to win it. And plus, you are not a Joe Biden 87. You're a Chuck Grassley 87. And I'm telling you, the guy's 91 right now. He's still exceptionally sharp. But then Trump said, and when he was down a lot in the polls, I came to save him to be U.S. Senate. Senator Grassley did remind me, and I chuckle at this, but it's also true. He has not been down in the polls since 1980. There's a lot of your listeners who weren't even born in 1980.
I think it ought to be in the Constitution. If you have not been down in a poll since before most of your voters were born, then you have served your tour of duty, and it is time to move
I
on.
think, Steve, this goes a step further. I think it's a deal about how do you win the midterms. I don't believe you're going to win the midterms by saying, listen, we're going to hold up all these appointments because we got this blue slip thing that nobody knows about, that nobody can understand, nobody can articulate, but all of a sudden because you in the privileged Senate know about it, that's how you lose a Senate midterm. I believe you need to find a way to work around it, protect the integrity of the institution. I fully support it, fully get it, but give Trump his confirmations on the attorneys and the U.S. and the justices.
All right, Todd and Aaron, what do you guys think of this conversation?
Yes, I didn't know Samuel Adams' beer came out this summer with a blue slip special. It did. I wanted to honor that treasured memory.
In fact, that's a collector's item. You could originally get summer of 1774, and then they invoked the blue slip, and so they waited 2 more years.
We do polling on the institution all the time. The polling on the Senate is like, what? This is where Chuck, what is he thinks he's defending? What honored institution? It's not an honored institution at all. That's what just being in that club. It's a nostalgic notion, and it's a nostalgia without a true sense of the blood and suffering that even coming back to Iowa all the time. It just, God bless them, but it doesn't. None of it matters. Right now, they're trying to take our culture away in a land that doesn't know the difference between a man and a woman.
Yep.
This is war.
Yep.
That's it.
100%.
This brings up the favorite little fun fact about Chuck Grassley. Chuck Grassley began his career in public service when my dad was 8 years old. Before he even hit puberty, that's when Chuck Grassley was entering public service. Favorite fun fact.
Or could even say the word, probably at that age.
Yeah. Favorite fun fact about Chuck Grassley. I think Bob illuminated something that is fascinating in this dynamic between President Trump and Congress, because by and large, he's working with a lot of people who, whether it's for goodwill or whether it's just this is the way all things have always been done, or it's being used as an excuse to subvert and thwart and undermine his agenda, this dynamic between upholding the institutions, upholding the way that we do things, upholding the integrity, and you can come to that from a place of good motivation, versus a disruptor to the system. That's a really hard dynamic. That's a really hard needle to thread, and I think that explains a lot of of this relationship or lack thereof in some cases between President Trump and members of Congress, because I think he understands this as well. I'm trying to tear down the system, or at least parts of the system that I
tearing down my way of life.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to, maybe it's good motivations, one and all. They're trying to uphold the integrity of the very systems that President Trump is trying to disrupt and expose. And I think that explains a large deal of why you see this weird relationship, especially between President Trump and the Senate.
All right, Bob, you get the last minute. What do you think?
Well, I think it's both very well said. And, I have tremendous respect for Senator Grassley. But the mood of the people today, and rightfully so, is we elected this president to get something done. Mm-hmm. And that's why he came out of the gate just storming and still is storming. And ask Iran, ask Hamas, ask whatever it is, Planned Parenthood. He came out of this gate storming, and now he's got his own party basically blocking him, saying you can't get these people confirmed. And the people are saying, we want you to lead and confirm. That's why his poll numbers are really good today, because they're seeing leadership actually take place when they saw before Biden playing the institutional game while taking the people, to the bank as a joke type deal. And so what they want is they want Trump to be able to confirm. So I still believe find a way to get through this, and you'll be better prepared for the midterms, but you'll also give Trump what he deserves, and that's the confirmation of his appointees.
Amen. And I think it was important for you to do what you did in this fight, okay? Because, you're not... You're just more mature and a better overall class of human being than I am. Okay. So, I hammer these guys so often that sometimes it can just become white noise. So I thought it was good for an actual adult maybe to try it for once. So thank you, Bob.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. When we come back, it'll be your turn to ask me anything. Stay tuned. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzen and Aaron McIntyre. I am Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Take advantage of that by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please don't forget to subscribe to our new YouTube channel. At Deace Show on YouTube. Not kidding. Got another 3 emails from people on Friday. Hey, I know I subscribed to your page. Went back thinking you were just joking, and I was unsubscribed. That happened 3 times after I got off the air Friday when I brought this up. So go there, play subscription roulette at YouTube. Maybe it'll work out for you. Maybe not. If nothing else, it's a fun game. At Deace Show on YouTube. We lose it every time. But it's fun. At Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, you can also please hit subscribe or follow if you're on Apple iTunes. And then leave us a 5-star review on the podcast platform that you prefer. Tens of thousands of you have left us 5-star reviews. Thank you for each and every single one. They mean a lot. We appreciate them. They help the show to grow as well. And we would appreciate it if you would add yours, if you should be inclined. And this part of the show brought to you by our friends over at Moxy Pest Services. And they know that it's really the little things that really make a big difference, right? And to me, the thing that sets them apart is the daily follow-up with their tech and crew to make sure that the best technologies and practices are there for you to keep your home as pest-free as possible. But then also make sure from a customer service standpoint that their agents aren't pests. They're not dragging stuff onto the floors of your home. They're not the folks that you gave them the garage code so they can get into the house while you're all at work, and then they didn't close the garage, so it's been open all day long. Or they did that with the back gate, that kind of stuff, right? They go the extra mile to make sure that at least for the limited time that you need their help, their agents and servers, they care as much about your home as you do. And that's why they've been in business for 25 years as an industry leader nationwide. And if you want to try them for the first time right now, get your first pest control service for just $25 for that 25th anniversary. Take advantage of that right now at Moxy, MOXIE, MoxyServices.com/Steve, MoxyServices.com/Steve. Use the promo code Steve to get the special offer, $25 for your first pest control service, at moxyservices.com/Steve using the promo code Steve. And with that, it's time to once again ask me anything. Todd, you have the questions that came from our followers over on X. You deliver them to Aaron, who will now deliver them to me, sight unseen. Aaron, let's rock and roll, brother.
All right, we'll begin with John Endicott, who wants to know, what's a classic rock band whose songs just don't hold up anymore, and why is it Aerosmith?
For the most part, I think I agree.
Aerosmith doesn't hold up
to me.
anymore?
Isn't Sweet Emotion Aerosmith?
Yeah.
That song holds up.
See, to me, I think Aerosmith, Amy is a massive Aerosmith fan, so we've been arguing this for many years. To me, Aerosmith is just a bunch of doubles. Yeah, that song's okay. Yeah, that's good, I guess. Yeah, it's not bad, you know? There's not a lot of classics. I think Dream On is a classic. But frankly, I think Run DMC did Walk This Way better. I think there's just a lot of doubles. There's just a lot of doubles. You know, if I never hear another Aerosmith song, I'm okay with it. If it's on, I'm okay with it. You know? I think that's actually I think that's a pretty solid play. I'm going to go with Aerosmith. I agree with that. No? Okay, who would you pick then?
I don't know, but I wouldn't pick Aerosmith.
Okay.
They're Hall of Famers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they, you know, they're letting just about anybody into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame these days, if you've been paying attention to that. But yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not against it.
Rolling Stones.
See, I don't think that's blasphemous at all. I don't. Now, I think their song library has several more magnum opuses.
Like if I hear She's So Cold one more time on Classic Rewind, I'm going to wreck my car on purpose.
The term was doesn't hold up, right?
Yeah.
I'm taking their words of their, like, same thing. Like, they don't have to be your favorite band. You don't have to think they're the greatest of all time. Like, I once said on this show, overrated, and it's not. I think the Who is overrated only because they are Hall of Famers. Their greats are greats. If you listen to their entire canon, they've just got some incredibly weird, and they would own that too.
Boris the Spider and stuff like that. Yeah.
So. But the standard here I would never say that the Who doesn't hold up. Like which one?
I would argue, you're right. The Who does have some eclectic parts of their collection. I'd argue they have at least 4 songs that are better than anything Aerosmith rated in their entire catalog.
I would too. Yeah. I would too. Absolutely. But I think I like the words they chose, which is why I picked it. Doesn't hold up. I mean, I think that's one where whatever reason they were really popular back then and now people are wondering why. I don't think that applies to any band we've mentioned so far.
Okay, that's fair too. And if we're going to define it that way, I guess I would define it as if I played this to my kids and they thought, yeah, it was okay. Like, you know, I don't know why this is such a big deal, you know, but okay, fair.
Next, we go to Doug Catbird, who asks, if sola scriptura is real, why are there 30,000 Protestant denominations? If Scripture alone can interpret Scripture, then shouldn't we all be on the same page? I'm an independent Baptist church member, and every time this argument comes up, it seems like Catholics rout us because at the end of sola scriptura is each person interpreting Scripture for themselves and division of the body.
Well, first of all, you're never going to get away from each person determining Scripture for themselves because we're individuals. So we're made as individuals. So that's a fallacy. All right. In fact, that's what the priesthood of every believer is. You're charged with interpreting Scripture for yourself and applying it to some degree. All right. I mean, thousands of years before the church existed, we had the Word. I had someone come at me today and say, in fact, let me just read what he said, so I make sure I quote him directly. Let me find it in my X feed. He says, hey, how does the Word interpret itself, Steve? Is everything in Holy Scripture so straightforward that it needs no interpretation to understand? If you can tell me precisely what this 6-word sentence means, I'll adopt your line of thinking. I never said you stole money. Here's how I replied back to him. Can you tell me where you got the definition of the word steal from? Where did that come from? How would you even know what stealing is? How would you be able to create that definition or have that moral value statement regarding stealing at all? How do you know what money is? How do you know what that is? How do you know that those who gave you such information about what these terms mean and where they originate from, how do you know that that is correct? How would you know? How did you verify it? That's why, to me, this is much of this argument is a fallacy, because something predated the church. We had the Word of God before there was the church, for thousands of years, in fact. Right? So we had the Word of God before we had the church. We had revelation. By what standard did God judge the world in the Noahic era, in the antediluvian era? There's no Mosaic covenant. So, to me, at that point, you're saying that God was unfair to judge them, because they must not have known what righteousness was. There was no church. So how would they have known that they were acting in a way that was extremely debauched in the antediluvian period? How would someone have told them? All right. So to me, in the beginning, John answers your question. Answers this question. In the beginning was the Word. He doesn't say in the beginning was the church. In the beginning was a country. There are periods of times called covenants. We're in the church age now, all right? But churches can be wrong all the time. I can be wrong all the time, all right? We are told to individually, boldly approach the throne of grace. We are told we do not need an intermediator anymore between God and man, that the veil has been torn. All right. And so that implies, at the very least, some form of individual discernment we are all going to be responsible for. All right. So the question then becomes how, to what degree, and that's where Todd and I can get into arguments about, can you lose your salvation or not? Okay. But now I have a very high view of the church. I spend most of my show trying to motivate the church. I'm going to get on a plane here in a couple days, fly halfway across the country, and probably be stranded on my way home or the way there, looking at the way things are going, following Steve Baker's account, all right? Because I care deeply about the church and her doing her charge, okay? But even if there were not a church, the Pharisees thought they were the church. And they came to Christ and said, hey, quiet your followers down. They're causing a ruckus. He said, even if I told them to be silent, the stones would cry out. So revelation predates all of this. In the beginning was the Word. God's used the Word to speak the universe into existence. All right. Now, to ask for a perfect, the church hasn't been perfect. Whether the church is in Rome or the church is the Southern Baptist Convention, the church hasn't been perfect. So there's going to be error. This is why God sends prophets. This is why there are reformations. This is why there are schisms. This is why there are rebukes. These things exist because there's going to be error. Sometimes error is going to be systemic. We're human, but in the end, that's the ultimate answer to your question is also answered in the scriptures. By their fruit you will know them. I have no idea, and I don't know how anybody could possibly know how to do the math between Calvin and Augustine. I wouldn't presume to do that, and I love me some me. I have a very high view of myself. Ain't that high? All right. I mean, I don't know. Single predestination versus double predestination. We'll get into some of this here in Romans chapter 9. What does all that mean? All right. And of course, Calvin thought the Catholic Church was the whore of Babylon, and Augustine thought it was the greatest hope for mankind in the 4th century. Okay. So I have no idea how to referee all those kinds of things. And in my individual view, there are things I agree with Calvin on and disagree with. There are things I agree with Augustine on and disagree with. I have no idea where I'm qualified to even make those judgments myself. Okay. But this ultimately comes down to by their fruits you will know them. So I think that these arguments are good and healthy. I actually enjoy the fact that we're having them more often. I think that's a good, healthy sign, okay? Because when we were a healthier culture, we had these frequently, and they were way more nasty than what most people think is nasty nowadays, all right? But I think ultimately we need to leave room for grace. And that ultimately the standard is by their fruit you will know them. All right. So do I think Catholicism is the most precise understanding of Christianity? No. If I did, I'd be Catholic. Do I think that Catholicism is an aberration of Christianity? No. If I did, Todd would not be here. That's why that's why I've not hired people who come from other movements or sects of Christianity that I do view to be perversions of it, substantively. Disagree with key and core doctrines like whether Jesus actually is God or not, things of that nature. That's why. Those are non-negotiables to me. But, just like the Word predated the church in Rome predated the Reformation by 1,500 years. So between the time of the canon, when it was completed, in the apostolic era, and when a little ball of hate monk nailed 95 theses to a door on Halloween in 1517, who was a Christian then? Where did Western civilization come from? What was the vehicle by which God used to take his word, preserve the word, and take it to the world? It was the Catholic Church, by and large. You know, I know a lot of people on the Protestant side that, on one hand, just decry Catholicism as a cult, essentially, and yet name their kids things like Boniface, and then they want us to go back to the politics of Pat Buchanan. Well, who were those guys? Those guys were Catholics, you know? So I don't know how to play referee with those things. I don't. I just know who the referee is. God. And ultimately, one plants and other waters, and God gives the increase. So you can look at the fruit on the tree to determine if God is at work in that person's life, if God is at work in that institution's life, if God is at work within that church. And then we can have a lot of profound disagreements where that is concerned. Listen, if there's anybody who knows how to disagree, it's someone who calls themselves an independent Baptist. That's my experience. Okay? You know how to disagree if you're in that camp, right? So, you know, you would call yourself the Baptist wing of the Baptist convention. Okay? So we can't get around our humanity. We're sinners. The Pope is a sinner. I'm a sinner. Billy Graham, sinner. We can't get around this. We cannot get around projecting our sinfulness under the world, under the word, tainting it with everything that we touch. Okay? And thank God, therefore, that despite all of our sinfulness and the lack of reason and qualifications we have for salvation, he saves us anyway and uses vehicles as warped and screwed up and problematic as we are to advance his word and preserve it for future generations anyway. What was the first written, accepted, widely used Bible in the Western world? St. Jerome's Latin Vulgate was, well into the time of the Reformation. So everybody that read it then wasn't a Christian? I think sometimes on both sides of this argument, frankly, we just really don't want to be held accountable to our own standard. We want to advance a narrative. This is not the place to come to for that. I'll destroy your narrative even if I share your conclusion, because it has to actually come from a place of reason, logic, and non-fallacy. So if you're looking for affirmation of a narrative, this will never is a tough word. This will never be your show. I'm not into that. I'm a truth guy. Okay. So if you want your narrative itched and scratched, I'm not going to be your guy. All right. You want to, search out truth and come now and let us reason together and question one another, and I think we've modeled that pretty good so far, through the first half of the book of Romans over the last almost year and a half now. Then I'm all in on that. Okay. I love doing that. But, in order for me to be here to advance a narrative one way or the other would require me to appoint myself as the referee over which narrative to promote and which narrative not to. And I've not been given that calling and qualification, at least as far as I can tell. Next question.
Next, we go to Conan Peace, who asks, as one of the political activists that turned around Iowa, what advice do you have for those of us in Alberta, Canada? And what do you think of the independence movement here, or having one, or flee? I think Prime Minister Carney has moved on from managed decline to destruction.
I think he should strongly consider fleeing. And, let's go back to church history and tradition. When the Puritans were fleeing to come to America, they really, Columbus essentially discovered what we know as this hemisphere, all right? But America, as it was discovered, and those who followed, the America that we live in today, Columbus never set foot here. But the passage here to this part of the New World, he blazed the trail for that. But the world, the America that we know it today began with the Pilgrims landing at Plymouth Rock. That's why we have Thanksgiving. That's the point of it. Well, who are they fleeing? They weren't fleeing the Moors or the Muslims or the Ottomans of the era. They weren't even fleeing, Bloody Mary. They weren't fleeing the Catholics. Who were they fleeing? The Protestant King of England. That's who they were fleeing. They were fleeing him. So imagine this now. I mean, in many respects, the Puritans were like what I just said about an independent Baptist who views himself as the Baptist wing of the Baptists, okay? The Puritans viewed themselves as the Protestant wing of the Protestant Reformation. And they had to flee their own king, their own Protestant king, Church of England. They had to flee. This is also why I'm really not big on tribalism. I'm just not big on it. I live in a country founded by people who had to flee their own tribe.
Less than 100 years
Correct.
after Martin Luther,
Correct.
this happened.
Correct. That's why I'm just not big into it. I'm just not. I'm just not. That's not my thing. Okay. I'm not down with tribalism. So, but I think you should strongly consider that if our American forefathers here had to flee their own church to be free, I think you should strongly consider, if you want to be free in Canada, you're going to have to flee. Now, fleeing can take on a couple different forms. All right. It doesn't necessarily mean going to another country. Here's what it could mean. Is there a province in Canada that is saner than the rest of the country? Now, I don't know contemporary politics, but traditionally, hasn't like the Calgary, Alberta era been considered more sane than
Alberta as a whole?
As a whole? Okay. Then what I would strongly suggest is everyone moves there. You're diluting your votes everywhere else. I would strongly suggest everyone moves there that wants to be free. Start there. Create essentially an oasis. Alberta essentially becomes what the neighborhoods of the Sons of Liberty were in the 1750s and 60s or 1760s. The king's edicts were just never getting enforced there. And if you were the bureaucrat called in by the king to go into those neighborhoods in order to get them to do the thing, your hope was you were coming out of there tarred and feathered, because that was the minimum cost of going into those neighborhoods and thinking you were going to impose on them. Tarring and feathering was the starting point of what would happen to you. And you guys are going to have to consolidate your political power. You're going to have to be stronger together to the point that you are ungovernable by what happens throughout the rest of the country. Use the largesse of the amount of square mileage of your country to your advantage. If you were to do that, it's not like you have the most imposing military force in the world either. It would be a very difficult thing to enforce via voluntary compliance, or minus voluntary compliance, I should say. So I would consolidate all of the power we could. I think being spread out is not doing you any good. I think you guys are all better off living in one singular province, wielding all that power, and essentially you are a cudgel against the rest of the country. I would start with that, is what I would do. But just, having a series of other provinces where you're all spread out and you're just canceling out each other's votes and each other's beliefs and each other's activisms, I just think that's a fool's errand. So it's good to and here's the thing you need to understand. There's never ways out of this that are not inconvenient for people. It's pretty inconvenient for over 100 Puritans to take their wives and children and put them on a rickety boat called the Mayflower to come to a part of the world they had never been to before. They didn't even arrive until November, which means they were up against the weather and winter. By the first calendar year was up, half of them were dead. In fact, they had to stay parked in the harbor originally through November and December because so many of them got sick on the trip over. So there's never a way to do this that's just a click of a button or point of a mouse. It will require inconvenience. And you have to get yourself into a mindset. And this is true, man, whether you want to lose weight, because I've been there. Okay. This is true, man, if you want to put your marriage back together. I've been there too. This is true if you want to reestablish your rapport with your kids, particularly your adult kids. This is true of anything, right? You have to get to a point where you are willing to suffer more than those on the other side of the equation are willing to make you suffer. You have to get to a point that you hate being morbidly obese more than you hate what it's going to take to no longer be that. You detest what divorce will do to your family more than whatever about your spouse has you contemplating that you detest has you contemplating divorce in the first place. That's the ratio in all human endeavors. There's just no convenient way to do the things that are most important in life. There just isn't, and there never has been. And I think we are, as a generation, we are uniquely fooled into believing otherwise because we have more convenience at our fingertips than any generation that's ever existed in the history of our species. And a lot of it is this device right here in my hand, right? Hey, I can just order groceries. I don't have to even go out to the restaurant. They'll bring it to me. I don't have to go and have... Do you remember going in and trying to get jobs as a kid, teenager, young adult, where you had to actually like go in and ask the place, are you guys hiring? And if they told you no, you kind of look like a clown and walked out. You remember those days?
Yeah.
Now I just go online to Indeed.com or Career Builder and I find out. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? I mean, do you remember getting together with your buddies in the back room there at the local video store that had the certain kind of film?
Mm-hmm.
And you guys really wanted to go in there and see what they had, but the stigma of being seen going in there, you were like, well, who's going to draw the short end of the stick and risk that, right? You know what I'm saying? Now I can just get all that right here. Remember the jokes about having to go to the pharmacist and ask for a condom, to buy the condoms behind the pharmacist desk? And the thought that he might call your old man or your mom and let him know what you were in the store doing, you know what I'm saying? I can just have that stuff just ordered now. See, the stigmas are gone, all replaced with convenience. And so we think that everything really is just this easy. It's not. It's not. None of the most important things in life are easy. And so you are not going to be able to subdue a country as far gone as Canada is without a good many people being willing to take on a good amount of inconvenience. I'm going to move. I mean, a new church, new job. But just staying where you are, they're just going to pick you off, and that's exactly what they're doing. You guys have any thoughts on that before we move on?
Well, nothing worth doing is easy. Nothing important is easy, as you said. You're absolutely right. But we live very, very easy lives. So I think if you do buy the transitive property, maybe we aren't living important lives. We need to start asking ourselves.
Yeah, we had that chart at the beginning that shows the tanking of men at 30 who are not married and have and own a home compared to the previous generation indicates we're not living meaningful lives.
Nope.
It's very indicative of that. Yep.
So the latter part of the submission, where he talks about Prime Minister Mark Carney moving from managed decline to destruction, from my vantage point, I think that's an accurate deduction. You remember before they got rid of Justin Castro, they did kind of a head fake when it came to the issue of immigration. From what I've been seeing, that was just a head fake, and they have doubled and tripled down.
Yeah, Keir Starmer did that a couple earlier this summer too, right? Yeah, tried that too. Yeah.
So you've got two options: flee, or everybody who is like-minded lives in Alberta.
Yep.
That's your only two options.
You want to hear something very eerie? I just moved my mouse because my screensaver came on because I gave too long of an answer. All right. And who to follow shows up on my X feed. Pierre Poilievre, what's that guy's name? The so-called wunderkid conservative who all he ever did was eat an apple once and supposedly was like some base right winger who then got his ass kicked. Whatever that guy's last name, right? Dude, out of nowhere, that guy just shows up at someone to follow. Is X literally listening in right now?
Oh, everything's listening to everything all the time.
I'm not even kidding. I looked down. That was, hey, he or she you need to follow. Yeah. You're going to need, by the way, you're going to need more than guys who can just eat an apple while some 103-pound reporter, who couldn't bench weight their dog's weight, let alone their own, is sitting there asking snotty questions. I mean, I'm trying to think of, so far it seems like Malay has turned out pretty good. From what I can see from afar. Is it Argentina?
Well, the proof's in the pudding.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, just look at the numbers of, that country was fast-tracked to implosion.
Yes. But by and large, think of like Chris Christie was like the first politician I would apply this to. He was at the dawn, when he was governor of New Jersey, he was at the dawn of the social media age. You remember those early viral clips of him dressing down little, South Pole elves from the teachers unions, right? And he was like the Tea Party champion. Now he's just a rhino's rhino. Think of how Nancy Mace is in this group. How often the person who had no background at all, doing anything constructive at all, and just came out of nowhere because, one stupid social media clip like Pierre there, Wunderkid Pierre in Canada eating an apple in front of a total beta male creep. How often that turns out? It doesn't turn out. But the ratio, the batting average, they're pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then I'd tell you something. Yep.
Let's go to, actually, I'm not sure if we have enough time for this one. Let's ask it and then we'll answer it maybe after the break. Or maybe you've got a short answer. Shane Eppert says,
That's funny.
Would you stay at an autonomous church as a young man with a new family that you're rooted in with some like-minded people while having influence and ministry doors opening, etc., but the denomination as a whole is veering off a cliff? Or should we start over in an established conservative community?
Actually, I can give you a short answer to this. How much, here's the thing, can you stop your church from giving any of your resources, any of the tithe resources or anything to that denomination going off the cliff? If the answer is yes, stay. If the answer is no, then the meter's running. You'll be out. Just a matter of whether it's next year, 2 to 3 years, you'll be out eventually. How much autonomy do you really have? I mean, do they control your land? They control the building? Do they have the ability to determine if the pastor has gets hit by a bus, they play a role in replacing that person at all? You need to find out how much autonomy you really have to answer that question. So if you truly have autonomy, then sure. Okay. But if not, then meter's running. So get busy living or get busy dying.
I'll have more after the break.
All right. You want to comment on this too?
You're
welcome to. Yeah. When we come back.
I
thought that's what you were teasing.
Oh, no. We'll have more questions after the break. Yeah. I thought you were teeing me up to fill some airtime before the music starts, and there it is.
There it is. All right. So, yeah, you got to check out, brother, how much autonomy do you truly have? How much does the overarching organization truly control in your ministry? And that'll tell you whether or not you can stop the tumor from metastasizing or not. All right, when we come back, Aaron is right. More of your questions and more answers that may or may not be good. Stay tuned. As you know, medical freedom is not a luxury, but it should be the right of every single American. But you need to act on your rights. You can have all the rights you want. And you know what? I'm going to throw a bone Todd's way. One of the things I used to listen to when I was trying to figure out where all the various tribes of Christianity came from and believed. And so I first heard Scott Hahn because I used to listen to a local show that was not local, it was syndicated local here on the Catholic radio called Catholic Answers. And I used to listen to it frequently because I was fascinated that Hahn was a former evangelical turned Catholic. And I thought he gave one of the best explanations of how the inner workings of a covenant with God operate. And he gave an example when he talked about the Old Testament Israelites. And he used this example. In fact, I should give Scott credit because I've used it myself in talks many times all over the country since then. He said, say your parents give you a car for graduation. They give you the car. They give you the keys. Car's in the garage. It's yours. They have the sovereign power to grant you this vehicle, and thus have done so. And they have handed the keys to you. It does belong to you. It is yours. But what happens if you never put the key in the ignition and drive it out of the garage? It's yours. Those who had the power to grant it to you did so. But if you never put the key in the ignition, or nowadays it would be push the button, okay? If you never put the key in the ignition and drive it out of the garage, have you really taken control of it? Have you claimed it? And he said that was a very good analogy, and I thought for what God says to ancient Israel. The land is yours, but you must go and take it. I have the authority and power to give it to you. And in fact, if you take the initiative to do so based on my sovereign will, you will watch me now exercise that sovereign will even all the more through you. But if you just sit on the sidelines and don't do anything, it's still yours. I gave it to you, but did you really claim it? See, that's how your rights work too. So we can talk about medical freedom all we want, and we can blog about it and everything else, okay? But if we don't actually act on it, then what is it? And see, that's one way you can do that. Our friends at Jace Medical. Get the Jace case, get a backup of medications that are some of the most important in important times, things that have saved humanity from infections and real pandemics like amoxicillin, doxycycline, and others. Now you can expand it too. to more customizable options that fit your particular situation, because they're expanding their menu of options there too at Jace Medical. Get a hold of them today. Use my last name, Dace, at checkout for a discount on your order when you go to jace.com. Jase for jace.com. Use the code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order. That's DACE at checkout, DEACE at JASE, jace.com, for the discount on your Jace case. Get started today. You can argue all you want. I have a right to medical freedom, but if you won't act on your rights, don't expect your government to protect them either. All right, Aaron, let's continue on.
Next, we go to TB, who asks, what's the purpose of student learning? If you were the chancellor of a Big Ten school, how would you implement and restore that purpose?
This is a great question.
Yeah.
Okay. To me, I think that the goal of student learning, and see, this was a major mistake that was made on the right in the last era. All right. In the last era, and I don't know who made this decision. I don't know who was in charge, between Jerry Falwell Sr. and Francis Schaeffer and Paul Weyrich and Billy Graham. Whatever the in-between after those guys passed on, the founders of the original religious right, okay, between those guys and the era we are now, whoever was in charge made this decision that we had to abandon overtly religious language or curriculum or understandings in order to compete in the modern world. Now, hey, listen, I have helped a lot of candidates and causes over the years in my career. Never once did I tell someone, hey, once you get to the state legislature, make sure you go in there day one and say, thus speaketh the Lord God of hosts. Never did that one time. Okay. So there's some common sense. We have a common language vernacular. Okay. But see, this is where terms like traditional marriage came from, which would seem to indicate, well, is there another kind then? What if is there untraditional marriage? You already lost. And when I first took over on WHO radio, I had some of these leaders on my show and started asking them questions about stuff like this. And their answers, well, shall we say, they were disappointing, to say the least. And I think a lot of it, frankly, goes back to the conversation we had with Vander Plaats last hour about the difference in perspective between Trump and Grassley. This idea that, well, the institutions are largely neutral or still ours. So if we use neutral language, we will destigmatize ourselves and they'll look like the real radicals and the normies in the culture will side with us against them. Is that how it turned out?
No.
No, that's not how it turned out. Failed. Because we took the biggest weapon that we had, the Word of God, and we said, we're going to set that one aside and let's argue this on philosophical grounds. There's a reason why the other side says, make your arguments without using the Bible. Hey, if I was in a war, I'd also say, hey, come at me without, a gun. Attack me without tanks. Don't have we'll go to war, but you can't use any planes or subs. I'd do that too if I could. Wouldn't anticipate my enemy to be stupid enough to agree, but we did it. We were stupid enough to do it. And of course, they got us to secularize ourselves so that they can then replace our religion with theirs. Why did I go down this road to answer your question? Because you need to understand the background of how we got here for me to give you the answer. So for you to understand, you may not agree, but if you want to understand the reason I'm going to give you the answer I'm going to give you, you need to see the background of how we got here.
Schools are just for teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. Just basic skills.
No, they're not. Are humans just a compilation of skills? No, they're body, soul, mind, and spirit. As far as we know, although J.D. Vance may tell us otherwise any day now. Okay. As far as I know, we are the only beings in the universe made in the likeness and image of God. All right, so we are not automatons. We're not a composition of processes. We're beings with a conscience. That conscience is informed by something. Who founded all the Ivy League schools? The Christians did. How were the Ivy League schools originally founded? As seminaries. When the Spirited Age wanted to take over, what did it do? Get rid of all of that. Secularize it instead. Now remember, there's no such thing as the secular. That is just a temporary staging area to get you to the new religion that they plan to impose in its place. And what did we do for the last generation? We agreed with the secular. So we aided and abetted them then turning these things and weaponizing them with their religion against us instead. Everything's theological, folks. Everything is. Every government's a theocracy. It's just a matter of the type and who's the theo. There's not a square foot over this creation of which Christ does not claim, that's mine. Copyright Abraham Kuyper. There's no part of this world. Jesus says, I am the Lord of God's creation to John in the book of Revelation. Says to his disciples, all right, all authority on heaven and earth, except for this secular realm that you guys come up with later on that apparently just totally fooled us in heaven and we didn't see coming. Is that what he says? Nope. All authority on heaven and earth has been granted unto me. There is no secular realm. I've quoted it many times. I'll quote it again. One of the smartest summations of the culture war comes from copyright James Dobson. There's only two worldviews. God is or he ain't. Those are your options. Now, within those two things, we can have a lot of micro debates, but essentially every debate comes down to God is or he ain't. It's one of those two. So we're going to have to address the body, soul, mind, and spirit to actually have student learning in the Western tradition. Which is another nice, by the way, where did we get the term Western from? Well, we used to just call it Christendom, but that would be offensive, of course. So we secularized that too. Now we have neither. We secularized Christendom to Western civilization. We have neither now Christendom nor Western civilization. See how that works? And instead what you have is the spirit of the age doing its long march to the institutions that it is basically completed now. But it's okay, because Chuck Grassley's making sure we obey the blue slip. Next question.
Just parenthetical information. 1642, original Harvard motto. This is cited often.
Yep.
Everyone shall consider as the main end of his life and studies to know God and Jesus Christ, which is eternal life.
Yep.
So there's that. I mean, unless you understand the beast that you have created, there's no way that you're going to be able to disassemble and replace it with something else.
Right on.
Next, we go to Breakfast of Coffee and Toast asks, if I see a car crash as I'm driving, should I stop and render aid or just call 911 and let the pros do it?
I think it depends on the situation. Would your insertion cause more damage? And if the answer to that question is yes, meaning what action you have to commit in order to aid with, to everything to every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the laws of physics remain. Okay? So would your insertion in the event, like let's say there's a bunch of cars behind you, you slam on your brakes to go and get involved or make a swerve, does that cause another round of, what's the reverb on that? I think it would first of all, I'm glad you asked questions like this because they're about taking initiative. We should always err on the side of whether to take initiative or not. It's a general rule, particularly as men. Solve your problems with aggression, okay? When in doubt, act. But there's nothing wrong with assessing the situation first. And if it turns out your action may cause even more suffering than is already taking place, then my answer would be no. So I think it comes down to what are your surroundings and what are the conditions of this particular situation? You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm curious why this caught Todd's eye.
Good question, too.
Oh, well, because the answer seems pretty obvious to me that all things being equal, you should absolutely pull over and render aid. And
well, he said stop the crash. Isn't that what he said, Aaron? Stop it? Can you read it again?
Let me
maybe I misunderstood it. Can you read it again?
Let me advance the slides. I already advanced on. All right. If I see a car crash as I'm driving, should I stop and render aid or just call 911?
I misunderstood then. You are right. Okay. Then the answer is yes. I thought somehow, I don't know. You know what? I need to apologize to Charles Grassley. He's apparently sharper than me. I took this to mean that it was to stop the crash from happening. If we're talking about the event has already occurred and then to stop and render aid, then the answer would be yes. For the most part, again, do you have your kids in the car? Or there's like a fireball, an inferno? Okay. See, I mean, there are still some specific conditions here that have to be met. But as a more general rule, the answer to this one would be yes. I completely screwed the pooch on that. My bad.
Just think that your default to let the pros do it. Trust the experts. Let the pros do it. That's a default we've gotten into, and that's going to take us to the Wally world where we can't be bothered about anything. There's always somebody else who can or should be doing something other than me.
Yeah, safetyism and that kind of stuff.
You have things reversed. You should, as an American man, should be endeavoring to do and be capable of doing as much as possible within the limits of the gifts God gave.
I mean, is your wife in the chair next to you having contractions? You're on the way to the hospital. I mean, there are specific situations here to ponder.
If you're just a guy, I mean, this happened to me. My wife and I drove up on an accident that clearly just happened. If the ambulance was not going to get there by the time somebody, probably for 10 minutes. That's the emergency. There was no place we had to suddenly be where there was, and people died in that crash. And I as it turns out, I ended up sitting with the person who caused the crash. His bell was rung. He was trying to get out of a car that was on its side, and I just was talking to him while other people were in the turned over car with the kids who died sadly. But like what? Why is a pro?
Yeah, there were just two stories in the last week. One was here in Iowa. One was in Pennsylvania. The story in Iowa, there was a bus full of individuals, men of varying ages, a bus full of men from an addiction recovery center on their way to church one Sunday morning. They spotted a car that was submerged in a pond. They all got out. They got the guy out of the car, and the guy survived. There was a story in Pittsburgh. They saw an overturned, men saw an overturned vehicle. They tried and tried and tried to get this woman out of the car. They couldn't do it. So what could they do? One of the men just sat there by the overturned car and held the woman's hand until the first responders got there. There's always something you can do.
And this is an extension. If it's not a car crash, we always see these videos where no one does anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be risk sometimes too. Steve just got done talking at the beginning of the show. The really important things are always going to involve some level of discomfort and risk. And if you won't engage that, are you living an important life on any level?
Yeah, this is kind of why I thought you took this question, Todd.
I completely misunderstood it. So my bad.
The second part of that question was like, why is that even a consideration? I mean, there are very limited circumstances, obviously, where you probably shouldn't insert yourself, especially if you see the police on the way. Don't get in their way. But yeah. Next up, let's go to Steve Songer. This will probably be the last one for this segment. When you look at the root of your hope concerning your eternal destiny, do you have a part in this equation, or are you trusting wholly in the person and finished work of Jesus Christ without reference to yourself as having a part in the equation?
Yes. All right, final thoughts on the show. What do you think?
Todd, you can go first. Can we harken back, because silence doesn't do well on the air. Can we harken back real quick to the conversation with Bob and talking about Chuck Grassley wanting to uphold, and people, the archetype of Grassley. Let's just give him the benefit of the doubt. Wanting to uphold the integrity of the Senate.
Which has no integrity, but yes, go ahead.
Is that a problem?
Seems to be one.
Is that a little bit of a problem?
Seems to be one.
Let's say you just give these senators the maximum benefit of the doubt, and that they're all just dragging their feet because they're trying to uphold the integrity of the Senate. What planet do they live on? A different planet called Washington, D.C., apparently.
Smash the idols, all of them, and one of those is our lies. Man, we love our lies so much. And the last ones that we hold on to the longest for an 87-year-old man,
Is he 91 now?
Whatever. He's making out with
91
that
now.
lie right now.
Yeah, I think he's 91. All right, that'll do it for today. We're back at it again tomorrow, doing the overtime next for Blaze TV subscribers. For the rest of you, we'll see you noon to 2 Eastern. Until then, Romans 8:28.